Hello lovely beaders. Welcome back to my channel. In today's video I will show you how to make this 2-layered flower pendant. The petals are made with a modified peyote triangle beading. It is not so complicated, but in order to successfully make this pendant you'll need to know peyote beading. Start by stringing 2 pieces of color A and 1 piece of color B delica beads. Put a double knot to make a circle with the beads. Step out from the color B delica. String 1 piece of color B and 1 piece of color A delica and go through the next bead from your starting circle. String 2 pieces of color A delica and go through the next bead from your starting circle. String 1 piece of color A and 1 piece of color B delica and step up for the next row by going through the 2 color B delicas. You have the triangle shape with 3 corners. String 1 piece of color B and 1 piece of color A delica on the corner. String 1 piece of color A delica between the corners. String 2 pieces of color A delica on this corner. String 1 piece of color A delica between the corners. String 1 piece of color A and 1 piece of color B delica on this corner. String 1 piece of color B delica and step up for the next row by going through the 2 color B beads. String 1 piece of color B delica on the corner. Start peyoteing the side with color A delica. String 2 pieces of color A delica on this corner. Start peyoteing the side with color A delica. String 1 piece of color B delica on the corner. Start peyoteing the side with color B delica. With the last color B delica you need to step up for the next row. From now your step up part will be shifting because of the 1 corner bead and because we start to shape the petal. Start peyoteing the side with color A delica. Try to arrange the beads so that they are neither too loose nor too tight. If you pull it too tight, the top of the petal will look wrinkled. Unfortunately, I bead quite tightly and my petal curled up a bit at the end. Do as I say and not as I do. String 2 pieces of color A delica on this corner. Start peyoteing the side with color A delica. From now on you will have only the white corner. So between the white sides and the steel side you will just go through the beads. Start peyoteing the side with color B delica. Don't pull the thread too tight, especially here on the color B side. Step up for the next row. This is the first row with the shifted step up, so pay attention. Start peyoteing the side with color A delica. String 2 pieces of color A delica on this corner. Start peyoteing the side with color A delica. When you string the last color A delica on this side you will need to skip the corner between the 2 colors. So you go through the last color A delica and the 2 color B delica from the next side. Start peyoteing the side with color B delica. For the step up you need to go through the color B delica bead from the corner of the color B side and the 2 color A from the other side. Start beading the side with color A delica. String 2 pieces of color A delica on this corner. Make the side with color A delica. Pay attention to the shaping of the corner. Go through the last 2 color A delica and the corner bead and the next 2 color B delica. String 1 piece of color B delica on the top of the petal. Then go through the remaining color B delicas and all the color A delicas till you reach the step-up part of your row. Make the color A sides as usual. Peyote the sides and string the corner beads. The first big petal is almost finished. Lead your thread to the other color A side. You can weave the thread through the middle of the triangle or you can go through the color B side. I'm going through the triangle. I would like to take this opportunity to wish all my dear viewers a happy new year. May this new year be peaceful, happy and healthy. String color B delica on that side. Weave in the thread and cut it. You need at least 3 turnarounds to be safe to cut the thread. Thread the tail, weave it in and cut it. Never cut a thread right after a knot. If you don't put glue on the knot can come loose, and if you've cut the thread right after it, your entire beading might fall apart. The first big petal is finished. Make another one. I started my second one the same like the first with 2 pieces of color A delica and 1 piece of color B delica. You need to make the second one just the same like the first. So I sped up this petal beading, but you can always slow it down if you want. You will need in total of 5 petals for the first layer. Now that we have a moment, I'd love to ask for your support. If you enjoyed this video and found it valuable, please consider subscribing to the channel and giving it a thumbs up. Sharing my knowledge here is completely free, but to keep things going and continue providing helpful content, I rely on your support. Your engagement helps the channel grow and reach more people, so thank you for being a part of this journey. If you'd like to go even further, you can buy me a coffee, or check out my tutorials and jewelry pieces. Links are in the description. Thanks for all your help. The peyote technique, it's one of the most versatile stitches I know. With peyote you can create so many different designs. Flat pieces, tubes and even sculptural forms. No matter how many times I use it, I always find new ways to experiment and combine it with other techniques. What I also love is how neat and uniform the finished pieces look. The beads seem to just snap into place, creating a beautiful, seamless pattern. It's easy to learn, but the results are always stunning. Honestly, it never gets boring. I already have a few new ideas brewing for future patterns, so keep an eye out if you're also a fan of peyote. I finished the second petal. Go to the other side of the petal and start zipping the two petals together. First you need to sew together the corner beads. And when the corner beads are pulled together, you need to zip together the sides. And when you zip together the sides, you need to string one piece of color bead delica and turn back in the other side's last delica. This bead is important for sewing together the two petal layers. Weave in the thread and cut it. I don't want to bore you with this part, so I will cut out the weaving in parts. You need to make a third petal just like the first two. I made my third petal off camera to not make the video unnecessarily long. So I made my third petal and I need to zip it together with the second one. It is the same like the first zipping. First you need to sew together the corner beads. After that, you need to zip together the sides. And the last step is to string one piece of color bead delica and turn back in the other side's last delica. You have 3 petals. You need to weave in your thread and your tail. And start to make the 4th petal. You need to zip the 4th petal to the 3rd petal. First sew together the corner beads, then zip the sides together, and the last step to string the bead between the 2 last delicas. I sped up this part because it is the same like the first 2 zippings. You need to make the last petal to finish off this first layer of petals. With this last petal you need to zip together 2 sides. But first you sew together one side and finished off with the extra delica bead. Lead your thread to the other side of the petal. You need to go down in the middle of the flower to start sewing together the last side too. First sew together the corner beads, then zip the sides together and string the bead between the 2 last delicas. And the first layer of petals is finished. Unfortunately it has a little bit of curve, but mainly because I beat too tight. Start making the little petals the same like the bigger ones. String one piece of color B and 2 pieces of color A delica beads. Put a double knot to make a circle with the beads. Step out from the color B delica. String one piece of color B and 1 piece of color A delica and go through the next bead from your starting circle. String 2 pieces of color A delica and go through the next bead from your starting circle. String 1 piece of color A and 1 piece of color B delica and step up for the next row by going through the 2 color B delicas. You have the triangle shape with 3 corners. String 1 piece of color B delica on the corner. Make the triangle the same like the big triangle by stringing the color A delicas on the sides and the corner between the 2 sides. String 1 piece of color B delica on the 3rd corner. And string 1 piece of color B delica and step up for the next row. Make the next two sides by stringing the color A delicas on the sides and the two delicas on the corner. The first and third corner will remain the same and you just go through on them. String the color B delicas on the last side but don't pull the thread too tight. Step up for the next row but pay attention to the shifted step up. Make the next two sides by stringing color A delica beads. Skip the corner between the two colors. Go through the last color A delica and the two color B delica from the next side. String a color B delica and go through the beads to reach the step up part. Make the next two sides by stringing color A delica beads. Go through the last two color A delica but only the corner bead in color B. String one piece of color B delica and go through the beads until you step out the bead before the corner. String one piece of color B delica and go through all the beads until you step up for the next row. Make the next two sides as usual. Lead your thread to the other color A side. You can weave the thread through the middle of the triangle or you can go through the color B side. I am going through the color B side. String color B delica on this side. The first small petal is finished. Weave in the thread and the tail and cut them. The small petal will sit between the bigger petals. Now you need to make another 4 small petals. I started my second one the same like the first with 1 piece of color B delica and 2 pieces of color A delica. You need to make the second small petal just like you made the first one. So I sped up the beading of this petal to not bore you, but you can always slow it down if you want. I first created this pendant back in 2018. At that time I was making a lot of peyote stitch designs. Around that time I made for example my tri-star pendant, video number 18 on my channel. Originally I intended to make something completely different, though I can't quite remember what it was. But as soon as I finished the first petal I knew it was going to be a flower pendant. After that first petal the rest of the flower came together so quickly. Once you have the final design in mind the beading process almost feels effortless. I don't know about you but I go through phases in beading. There are times when I just can't stop making peyote stitch projects, and then there are periods when it doesn't even cross my mind. I am too busy exploring other techniques. I've even had a few short phases where crawl cubic right angle weave was my absolute favorite. Would you like to see a few designs made with that technique too? Let me know in the comments. I finished the second petal. But before I zipped the petals together I wanted to get rid of my tail. It was bugging me. And now I start to zip together the sides. The zipping is the same like I showed before for the big petals. First you need to sew together the corner beads. And when the corner beads are pulled together, you need to zip together the sides. And the last step is to string one piece of color bead delica and turn back in the other side's last delica. Weave in the thread and cut it. You need to make a third petal. I made my third petal and I need to zip it together with the second one. It is the same like the first zipping. I don't want to bore you with this repetitive step, so I will sped up the zippings for the next 3 petals and I will make my petals off camera. It looks quite good already. I need to make 2 more petals. One more petal to make and we can start to put together the layers. Don't forget that with this last petal you need to zip together 2 sides. And now we need to assemble the 2 layers. This will not be an easy step. Lead your thread to a delica in the middle. The hard part is to find the delica from the other layer that is right on the good spot. The 2 layers need to be shifted from each other so that the smaller petals can sit between the bigger petals. First you need to be on the good side of the beading. The thread needs to be between the 2 layers. Try to align the 2 layers. The row where you zip 2 petals together needs to be on top of the corner of a big petal. I try to zoom in to show you better. If you find the good spot, start to sew together the layers. You step out from a delica in the small layer and go through the delica from the big layer. Then go through the next delica from the big layer and the delica from the small layer. It is not easy to show properly this part, but I try my best. I am not pulling the thread, just to show you the path that I make with the thread. If you are lost and no longer know which bead to attach to what, look for the nearest zipped row and you will know that that bead needs to be attached to a corner bead from the other layer. I was lost several times, but with that in mind I always found the right beads. And if you miss a bead, it's not that big of a problem, just try to sew the 2 layers together so that the petals stay shifted. I am sorry that I am out of the frame, but I was so concentrated to find the good beads that I forget the camera. I managed to sew together the 2 layers, and now we need to put the bicone in the middle of the flower. Lead your thread to a delica bead from the back side of the flower. You have 10 delicas in that circle and you will use 4 to ensure the bicone. Pick up the bicone and find the delica from the opposite side of the circle and go through on that delica. Then turn around and go through the delica beside the delica you are stepping out. Go through the bicone and the delica opposite to the one you were at. Turn around and go through the delica beside the one you were stepping out of. Go through the bicone again. Lead your thread to the front side of the flower to sew the bicone to that side too. Repeat what you did on the back side. Go through a delica from the small petals, step back in the delica next to that delica. Go through the bicone, find the delica opposite to the one you were exiting and go through that delica. Then turn back in the delica next to it. Reinforce the bicone by going through it again. Lead your thread to the color B delica bead strung between 2 small petals. We need to sew that bead to the corner beads from the 4th row of a big petal. So you step out from the color B delica and go through the first corner bead from the 4th row. Turn back in the second corner bead from the same row. Go through the color B delica again. Lead your thread to the middle bead from the small petal. Go through the middle so that your thread will be on the back side of the petal. You are facing the color B delica between the 2 big petals. Go through that delica. Go through the middle bead from the small petal to secure this delica. Lead your thread to the next color B delica between 2 small petals. You need to go down in the last delica and then up in the other side to avoid making new thread path before you can go through the color B delica. Find the corner bead from the 4th row and go through that bead. Go through the second corner bead from the 4th row. And go through the color B delica again. Go down on the last delica from that petal. And up on the delica next to it. And lead your thread to the middle delica from that small petal. Go through the color B delica between the 2 big petals. and back in the middle delica from the small petal. And you just need to repeat his steps around, sewing together the color bead delicas to the petals. So I will speed up this part because I am just repeating this step. It doesn't matter how you sew the petals together, just don't make extra thread paths and sew the 2 layers together to secure the flower shape. I'm just showing you what was the easiest way for me. If you find an easier way that works better for you, feel free to do it. We will need a bead loop for the hanger. Lead your thread to a color bead delica between 2 big petals. String 7 pieces of color bead delica and go through the delica between the petals again to make a bead loop with the beads. Secure this bead loop by going through the beads again. Weave in the thread and cut it. You need at least 3 turnarounds to be safe to cut the thread. Put a hanger on the loop. Or if you don't have this kind of hanger, you can use a jump ring or another kind of hanger with a jump ring. Thread the necklace through the hanger. My pendant is finished. And that's the end of today's video. If you watched it and liked it, don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. Thank you for spending time with me. See you next week.